Before we get into the lore of my music, we first need to get into the lore of me. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm joining you from the literal corner of my room. I literally pushed every single messy thing that I had in my room into the middle of it. Now it's impossible to walk there, but at least we have a cute little corner. I'm serving accountant chic, and today I'm going to be talking about the lore behind my music. Basically, Coffee Shop, my single, let's say, has a storyline with 2 characters and also a music video and some additional songs. So I'm here today to explain to you what they all mean. We're going to be accompanied by my notebook, my favorite pen in the entire world, and this atrociously colored yarn that I bought because I thought it was red. It was not, so let's begin. It all started on a long day in the trenches of quarantine in 2022 when I was watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I got so inspired by the story that I decided that I wanted to create a whole new universe in my mind that was similar to that of a shonen anime. I started crafting the idea for this story called Witch Story. It's actually really hard to both draw and paste these and hold the microphone at the same time, but I'm doing it regardless. The name originally came from the story being about witches, and I named it Witch Story as a placeholder name, and then I got too attached and now I cannot change it, and the story is officially named Witch Story. In Witch Story there were witches and detectives and other action-packed stuff, and I started crafting that story in my mind. During quarantine I didn't really get any long story ideas either, so what I started to do was that every time I would get an idea for an original character, I would dump it into Witch Story, which made Witch Story my story idea that has the biggest cast, and kind of became like a dump for my OC ideas. Original character ideas. I created some main characters for Witch Story, some side characters for Witch Story, some plots for Witch Story, but the story wasn't all set in stone in my head. So Witch Story was a blob of ideas for a very long time. And then summer of 2021 came and I was doing my thing, creating original characters in my head, thinking of stories but never actually sitting down to write them. And at this time I was also watching a lot of anime, and I noticed in a lot of anime a very specific character archetype that I really liked and wanted to have a character like that as well in one of my stories, which is the blonde androgynous guy. A great example of this would be How. So these characters would have shoulder-length blonde hair, would have really androgynous gender expression, and would be really cool. And I was like, I would really like to write a character like that as well. So I came up with Ary, one of the original characters that you can see in the Coffee Shop music video. So Ary was this guy who was that character archetype that I mentioned, and at first I didn't have a concrete idea on what he was going to be. He was rather an amalgamation of ideas, a cloud of something that I could understand with my being but could not put it into words. If you have ever written a story or created an OC, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And during this time I started also working on another original character, and that character would be Jade. Now when I first come up with Jade, I didn't come up with her with the intention of writing a OC for Witch Story. Honestly, like a lot of the original characters that ended up being in Witch Story were just characters that I created. Again, an OC dump if you will. And actually I first thought of Jade as an RPG character. So she had a sword, she had like elemental water abilities and all that jazz, and because I came up with Jade and Ary around the same time, their stories were connected from the beginning, and I decided to add Ary onto this as well, where I had them have a bow. So I came up with Jade and Ary and made them both RPG characters. However, I didn't have any RPG stories. I didn't have any fantasy. I didn't have any fantastic stories except for one, but I didn't want to add Jade and Ary into that, so I was like, why not add them to my dump story? So I decided to add them into Witch Story as a sword user and a bow user. And I was like, Witch Story is like this weird story, so I think I can like get away with shit like this. I think I can still keep Jade and Ary as sword users. It did not work out. I kept thinking and thinking about it because personally I think swords are really cool. I think bows are really cool. I grew up playing like Zelda and stuff, and I once wanted to be a sword user. I really tried to hold on to that archery, sword using idea, but unfortunately it did not make any sense with the story at all. And so I had to scrap the sword user and bow user Jade and Ary to the side, but I still had them in Witch Story, and now I needed to actually integrate them into a story in a way that felt natural. And this is also the time where I wrote my song, Coffee Shop. Someday we won't fear to fall in love. So during this time, Jade and Ary's ideas were there in my mind, but they were still pretty much blobs of ideas rather than fully fledged characters. Plus, now they didn't have their swords and their bows. I had to find like new character quirks, new motivations, new everything for them. But they still existed in my mind, and I kind of had an idea of the themes that I wanted to explore with Jade especially. This is not the best way to create an original character because personally, in my opinion, every character in a story needs to have their own arc that is separate. Two characters can be connected and be seen with each other most of the times, but still they shouldn't be too intertwined in my opinion, and they should still have their own arcs and their own backstories that doesn't involve the other character. But that is not what I did when I was first crafting Jade and Ary, because Jade became more of a character in my mind at first because, I mean, it's easier for me to write female characters most of the time, and a lot of the themes that I planned on exploring with Jade's storyline, themes of self-love, accepting yourself, finding yourself and stuff like that, those were really easy to write. And I gotta admit, when I was first thinking of them, I couldn't think of Ary as anything other than a catalyst for Jade to love herself, and I crafted his character so much later. But when I wrote Coffee Shop, I pretty much only had a solid idea for Jade and not so much for Ary, so I wrote this song from the perspective of Jade. And I wasn't planning on writing Coffee Shop actually when I first wrote it. I literally woke up in like 3 a.m, was really sleep deprived but couldn't go back to sleep. I saw my ukulele was standing at the edge of my bed, I picked it up, I wrote this song, I recorded it on my phone, I wrote the lyrics in my notes app, and went back to sleep. And then I forgot about it for like a good 5 months. And during this 5 months that I was unaware of the existence of a song that I literally wrote myself, I kept adding on to the idea of Witch Story and actually added some backstories for Jade and Ary that made sense with the plot of Witch Story as well. Witch Story basically has witches in it and detectives in it, and it takes place in a detective association where detectives solve crimes. I ended up making Jade and Ary both assistants in the detective association that Witch Story takes place in. This is getting a little complicated, but bear with me. So Jade and Ary are now working in the detective association. By the way, they're also 19 years old. They both come from different backgrounds, but they basically want to live a comfortable wage and live a life like that. There's actually like a big explanation on that, but I won't say anything about Witch Story because I don't want to spoil my story. You'll read it when it's finally out in 2040, because I have not written a single word. And Ary finally had his own backstory as well. He was coming from a troubled background, but I can't say that much about it because it will spoil Witch Story, and again, I don't want to do that. I still kept their stories pretty, not intertwined, but together. You know, they're best friends, they're pretty much the only 19-year-olds working at the association, so naturally they get closer and they're really good friends and they know about each other's past. So that is basically what Jade and Ary had come to when I refound Coffee Shop in my 4 GB worth of voice notes. When I found Coffee Shop, I was pleasantly surprised because I literally had forgotten about the song that I had literally written myself. But when I listened to it on my voice notes app, I actually liked it, and I was like, you know what, I can actually release this, because I'd been wanting to make music my entire life, but I didn't really know where to start, and finding Coffee Shop amidst 4 GB worth of voice notes finally gave me a way that I could make that dream come true. I was like, yeah, I can make Coffee Shop and I can actually turn it into a project that feels genuine and that I'm proud of. I originally only thought of releasing Coffee Shop as a single. That was going to be it. It wasn't even going to have like a full-on music video, but just like a visualizer. But as I worked on it more and more, I started thinking about Jade and Ary more and more and added more to their stories. And then I finally decided to make Coffee Shop into a full-on project rather than just like a song with a visualizer. So I decided to make like a full-on music video. I planned it out, and I also decided that it would not be released as a single but as a single album with 2 other songs. One of these songs would be an instrumental intro and a song from Ary's perspective. Now I had to write 2 more songs, Sunday and Kalimba Song. Coffee Shop was mostly about Jade's fears and her healing journey and the first sparks of hope in a healing journey where she saw that she could love herself and she could be fine again. Whereas Ary's song, Kalimba Song, I wrote it so that it would be him telling her that it's going to get better, and I saw it get better because I went through the same thing. And I know, cause I've been through the same thing as you went through. Someday intro is again an instrumental intro that combines some elements from Coffee Shop. It's a little like instrumental orchestral moment, if you will. So there's really not much to say about that. So after all the songs were done, I made the music video, and the music video basically talks about this one specific event that Jade and Ary go through, where Jade and Ary have a falling out that I cannot elaborate on because, again, which story is spoilers. And then they go through like a really bad event that I, again, cannot say because it's spoiler. And then they decide to reconcile and be friends again. But it's really hard for Jade because Jade feels like she doesn't deserve Ary, who is a really kind and loving and nice person. But she really wants to talk to him and wants to set things straight, and she has said some bad things to him, so she wants to apologize, but she just doesn't have it in her to do it. But Ary actually asks Jade to go to a coffee shop, and she debates on going or not going. She sometimes doesn't text Ary back because she feels really bad, but then eventually she does decide to go. And then they go to the coffee shop. And they end up talking, and Jade does say sorry for the hurtful things that she said to Ary, and Ary comforts her in telling her that she's not alone and she doesn't have to go through this alone, and that he has gone through a similar thing and things turned out to be fine, so things will indeed turn out to be fine. And then they smile and stand next to each other as the sun sets, and that is the plot of Coffee Shop. And you may actually think and say that, hey Sally, isn't this story called Witch Story and it has like witches and detectives, but these kids just go on a date and they talk about loving yourself and etc. So what's the connection here? Very good point, my friend. You definitely asked that question. I originally wanted to make like a short comic involving Jade and Ary and their backstories and how the coffee shop date actually goes. Like the music video depicts them actually going on a date, and I again actually started working on a mini comic that I was going to publish on Webtoon, and also a blog that I'm thinking of launching. But then I realized that it needs so much lore. Like Coffee Shop, when you first look at the music video, it seems like a very normal thing, right? Like you wouldn't know that this whole event takes place in a universe that involves witches and detectives. But when I was writing the backstory of it, I realized that I cannot run away from it. Like I have to elaborate on all of these like dark things as well. And it got like a little too dark, and I was like, you know what, I'm just not going to write it. However, there are some short stories and some haikus, literal haikus, that I wrote during this time that I would compile into a Coffee Shop Diaries entry sort of thing. I may have not finished an entire short comic, but I do have like a short one panel comic, not one panel, but like 5 panel comic that I really want to share someday in the near future. And I also have written some haikus from both Jade and Ary's perspective, and I would like to share them with you. Thank you so much to everyone for watching. This was honestly a really fun video to make. I will keep publishing music content, some things about the coffee shop and maybe some new things, I don't know. And also a new video every Sunday, just like this one, because wasn't this fun? I had a lot of fun. Would you like to do this again sometime? Okay, I hope you enjoyed this, and if this is the first video you're seeing of me somehow, please go and check out my music. I swear it's really good. Plus you can be really cool and say that you listen to a very indie artist. You probably don't know about it. They only have like 16 listeners on Spotify. Her name is Sally. I don't know if you heard it. You can be like really cool amongst your friends. So thank you so much for watching again. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.